If you're interested in building more emotional maturity, more emotional intelligence, this is for you. Let's start with talking about emotional circuits. We have 7 emotional circuits, and each one of these is designed to help us facilitate a healthy balance in terms of thriving and surviving in our environment. Each one of these emotional circuits will be at the core of our emotional and mental experience. So, if we want to start to build agency, the ability to make choices, we want to start to cultivate responsibility, the ability to respond differently and take accountability for our lives and for our experiences. Understanding these emotional circuits will be at the core of this healing process. So let's jump right in. The first emotional circuit is called the cares emotional circuit. And what this does is it helps to facilitate a healthy, functional connection between parents and children. See, humans are born highly dependent on their parents for the longest amount of time out of almost every species that we can see in this world. Humans are very immature and undeveloped when they're born. See, it takes a human like 3, 4 years to learn how to run, to where a horse learns how to run on their first day of life. So, human babies need to be nurtured and cared for by their parents for a very long period of time. This takes a tremendous amount of attention, energy, and sacrifice on behalf of the parent. So, this emotional circuit, the cares emotional circuit, is what programs the parents and the children to bond for long periods of time in the beginning. Because if the baby is constantly crying and needing to be held and needing to be nurtured and cared for, what keeps the mother caring for this child 2 years into it when this baby won't stop crying or when this kid won't stop having needs? It's this emotional circuit. So, what would a healthy development of the cares emotional circuit look like? The child is born into this world ideally being loved, being valued, being respected, and being accepted just for being born. They don't have to work. They don't have to take on their parents' emotions and care for their parents. So it's an unconditional acceptance. But what happens if that's not in place? What happens if the parents got too much of their own stress going on? They got too much of their own pain going on, and so they can't care for their children. Or if they have so much pain going on and then they want their child to take care of them. Or on the other hand, what happens if the parents are very loving and caring and they want to do the best they can? So they consult with doctors and parenting experts who say, when your child cries out, don't hold them. Let them learn to self-soothe. Let them learn to self-regulate. Let them learn to become independent. In other words, I want you as the parent to suppress all of your parenting instincts or to suppress this cares emotional circuit. And then what happens there is great pain develops from unmet needs on behalf of this child. So the cares emotional circuit could be considered the foundational emotional circuit. And if this one doesn't develop properly, it sets off a cascade, a domino effect for all the rest of them. The next emotional circuit is the panic and grief emotional circuit. We can see this through a lot of animals. Baby birds, for instance. A baby bird falls out of the nest. What does it do? It starts to cry out. It feels a tremendous amount of panic, and it cries out as an expression of this panic. So this emotional circuit gets activated when a threat, an existential threat, is present for babies. If my needs aren't being met because I'm not getting the attachment or the connection that I'm dependent on for survival and for development, then this emotional circuit gets activated. I feel a tremendous amount of panic and I cry out to get my needs met. For babies, this is the only way of expressing this emotion. So for the baby bird, they fall out of the nest. They're experiencing an existential threat. They feel a tremendous amount of panic, and they cry out. The mother hears this. They come down, pick the bird up, bring it back to the nest. they feed it, they comfort it, they soothe it, and the panic resolves. But what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens when this child's needs continue to go unmet? This panic becomes a baseline, and it becomes the normal, and it's always present. It never resolves. And this leads into the next emotional circuit, which is the fear emotional circuit. The fear emotional circuit is designed to identify threats. If I'm walking on a trail and I come across a mother bear and her little cubs, chances are I'm going to feel a tremendous amount of fear. My body's going to freeze, my legs are going to grow tight, and I'm going to get ready to get the heck out of there. The fear emotional circuit identifies threats. And so if our cares emotional circuit didn't develop, we're automatically feeling threats. Everything is a threat. We're in a constant state of panic because there's threats, where our needs are not getting met. And so this fear emotional circuit becomes hypervigilant. And we're always hypervigilantly scanning, looking for the threat that is going to explain why I'm always feeling this sense of panic, why I'm always feeling this sense of pain from my early, fundamental, essential connection not having been built. And so I always feel like something terrible is going to happen, or there's something bad that's going to come and get me. And this leads into the next emotional circuit, which is called the rage emotional circuit. Very similar to the fear emotional circuit, it's centered around a threat. See, again, if I'm walking down that trail and I come across that mother bear with her cubs, I feel a tremendous amount of fear. That's a threat. What does the mother bear feel? They feel rage because they see me as a threat. And so this rage is going to push the threat away. It's fight or flight. The flight is the fear, and the fight is the rage. And so if there's always a threat present, this rage is always there, which is compelling me to act out, compelling me to express fundamental unmet needs. And as long as that cares, fundamental pain is still there, the panic's there, the fear's there, the rage is always going to be there. I'm always going to be angry because my fundamental needs were never met. And I have a tremendous amount of pain, and that is very threatening to me. And so now I'm always finding things that I'm angry about. There's always this rage inside of me, and my mind is finding all sorts of things around me to justify why I'm so angry. And this leads us into the next emotional circuit, which would be the seeking emotional circuit. So I have tremendous pain. My fundamental needs were never met. I'm in a state of panic. My fear emotional circuit is always hypervigilant. I'm always angry. The seeking emotional circuit then comes in. The seeking emotional circuit, when it's balanced, would be to help me find things that will improve my livelihood, will strengthen, reinforce, enhance my connections to myself, to others, to nature around me, help me build some balance to have an optimal environment. But when all of these other emotional circuits are unbalanced, this seeking emotional circuit is always looking for a way to either justify why all these other emotional circuits are so hypervigilant, why I'm always in a state of pain, why I'm always in a state of panic, why I'm always scared, why I'm always angry, and to find something to soothe all of that pain. And this becomes the source of addictions later in life. I get addicted to relationships. I get addicted to the internet. I get addicted to gambling. I get addicted to substances. Each one of these an adaptation to that pain. A dysfunctional, unregulated attempt to soothe and comfort the initial pain that I was never able to meet. And so if we find ourselves being addicted to various substances or behaviors later in life, again, things like the internet, to food, to gambling, to relationships, to sex, so to work, all of these are an attempt to solve or to soothe that underlying pain that has set off the cascade of unregulated, dysfunctional emotional circuits. The next emotional circuit is called the lust emotional circuit. When our seeking emotional circuit is hypervigilant and unregulated, you can guarantee that we're probably going to find a little bit of comfort in things like relationships and sex and intimacy in some ways where we try to fulfill those original unmet needs that came from the CARES Act, that came from the CARES emotional circuit. Now, when this happens, we might find ourselves in relationships with people who are unable to fulfill the needs that we had because we're trying to fill those needs that were unmet from childhood. So in other words, we get into relationships with people who are going to continue those same patterns that we initially had from the unmet needs of childhood. In other words, we look for our partners to be our parents. And this is another source of great dysfunction. The seventh and final emotional circuit is perhaps the key to helping us bring all of these other emotional circuits back into balance and to help us regulate and process all of these other emotional circuits and all the pain that caused them to initially get out of regulation and out of balance. This emotional circuit is called the play emotional circuit. We can see it in all mammals and almost every animal as well. Play is essential for healthy development. We can see it in squirrels, in dogs, in cats, and of course in humans. This desire to have unstructured, agenda-free, interactive, person-to-person play, where we enact and express all of our emotions and we play different roles, pretend, where we get to pretend fight, we get to pretend hide, we get to pretend wrestle with each other, where we get to develop our bodies and develop our capacities. This is essential for the healthy development of humans in particular. Now, if our cares emotional circuit doesn't develop, and we're in a state of panic, and everything is a threat. So we're always afraid, and we're always mad, and we're always looking for the next thing that could solve the pain that we're in. We're looking for the next way that we could be good enough, the next way that we could be accepted and valued and respected because we didn't get that from our parents. What happens to our play as children? Well, it falls to the roof. Most of the times, this is one of the first things that is suppressed. We don't have the capacity to play. We're more focused on survival. Our nervous system is survival based in a state of panic. So as adults, when we are trying to bring all of our emotional circuits back into regulation, back into balance, one way that we can start to do this is to start to find humor and gentleness and silliness in very safe, playful ways. Now, if we're always in a state of panic, and we're always scared, and we're always angry because we're in all this pain, the only way that we can start to work through that is to start to cultivate safety. We have to get more familiar and more comfortable with discomfort. We have to get more comfortable with tapping into that initial pain by allowing ourselves to feel that pain, by identifying and recognizing when I'm scared, when I'm angry, when that sense of panic, or we might call it anxiety, is present, when those beliefs of unworthiness are not, or when those beliefs of unworthiness are present, or that I have to do things all by myself, or that it has to be intense. And we can start to choose different things. The only way to soothe fear is to cultivate safety. And the only way to cultivate safety is to get more familiar and more comfortable with what we're experiencing. So as we start to bring this heightened sense of panic and fear and anger and seeking down and the pain that we felt that caused this cascade, we start to engage with it, we recognize it, we start to try to meet those unmet needs in our own healthy, constructive ways. We have to start to bring up the play, the silliness, the goofiness. This is one of the ways that we can start to bring all of those emotional circuits back into balance and to start to cultivate agency, choice, and responsibility, meaning that we can respond to the exact same situations in different ways.